A new scientific paper provides remarkable scientific confirmation for one of the core tenets of the electric universe theory. For decades, scientific discovery has undermined, if not repeatedly falsified, the standard gravitational models of both planet and star formation. This includes evidence of fully formed planets detected about the disks of so-called protostars, that is, stars which are thought to be less than 10,000 years old. Glacially slow processes like gravitational collapse and accretion do not produce either planets or stars in mere thousands of years. The electromagnetic Z-pinch, however, is an exponentially more powerful and efficient force which works at a fraction of the rapidity as gravity. Recently, a team of scientists used data from the James Webb Space Telescope to study the atmospheres of 3 massive gas giant planets, about 130 light-years from Earth. Each of these colossuses is about 5 to 10 times the mass of Jupiter. Although these super-Jupiters approach the mass range of brown dwarf stars, they are thought to form in a fundamentally different way, with stars thought to form by gravitational collapse, and planet formation happening by gravitational accretion. The scientists were studying gas giants between 15 and 70 times farther from their parent star than the Earth is from the Sun. A recent Science Alert report describes the research as follows. Some experts question whether such massive, far-flung planets could form by core accretion. Accretion is expected to proceed more slowly so far from the star, potentially leaving too little time for planets to gather enough material before the disk dissipates. One solution is that such worlds could emerge from gravitational collapse, similar to brown dwarfs. To test that idea, researchers used James Webb Space Telescope data to search for sulfur, a refractory element that is largely locked into solid grains in protoplanetary disks. Detecting sulfur in a planet's atmosphere would therefore point to the accretion of solid material during formation, end quote. And indeed, the scientists did discover, quote, strong evidence of sulfur enrichment in the atmospheres of the 3 gas giants. Now, I can't overstate how strong an affirmation of EU theory is the following statements from the scientists involved in this research. The Science Alert report states, the planets are uniformly enriched in heavy elements, including carbon, oxygen, and sulfur, compared with their host star, indicating that large amounts of solid material were incorporated during their formation. The level of heavy element enrichment is difficult to reconcile with some classical formation models, the researchers found. There is no way planetary formation should be that efficient. It's a conundrum. We're really left with a mystery here. Now, as I've pointed out many times, to glean any real understanding from the overabundant conundrums that haunt astrophysicists at every turn, it's necessary to view each in the full context of scientific discovery. And in this context, the seemingly baffling efficiency with which the aforementioned gas giant planets formed can be seen not as an anomaly, but a pattern. And this pattern shows only one thing. It is electromagnetism and not gravity that is the primary organizing force behind both planet and star formation. The electric universe has always maintained that the electromagnetic Z-pinch is the mechanism by which both gas giant planets and stars form. When scientists express their astonishment at the incredible, quote, efficiency of the planet formation process, it is utterly unsurprising to proponents of the electric universe. The electromagnetic force, 10 to the 39th power stronger than gravity, works on a timescale never dreamt of in standard cosmology. It was just a few months ago that we reported on the most rapidly forming exoplanet observed to date, which was seen electromagnetically, quote, accreting at an incredible 6 billion metric tons per second. And as with the discovery we're discussing today, it challenged the foundational theoretical demarcations between a brown dwarf star and a gas giant. A Science Alert report on the discovery states, not only is this the highest growth rate ever recorded for a planetary mass object, but it is exhibiting behavior only ever seen before in growing stars and brown dwarfs. Yet it's just 5 to 10 times the mass of Jupiter, well below the 80 Jupiter lower mass limit for stars, and the 13 Jupiter lower mass limit for brown dwarfs. Now, the following description from the report is of self-evident significance for all members of the electric universe and plasma cosmology communities. It states, "Everything looked pretty standard until late June, when the object abruptly brightened. The increase in light, the astronomers were astonished to discover, resembled nothing so much as an exoburst, a brightness increase seen in a young star, typically associated with an episode of accelerated accretion. Crucially, its spectrum showed hydrogen features that are the hallmark of magnetically funneled accretion, seen in stellar exobursts." Magnetically funneled accretion. What astronomers are describing, in the limited concepts available in their theoretical toolkit, is the electromagnetic Z-pinch in action. In Wal Thornhill's peer-reviewed paper in the IEEE Transactions in Plasma Science, published in 2007, the Z-pinch is the mechanism by which stars form along plasma filaments of constant and near-constant width. Wal also proposed that in electromagnetically accreted nebular clouds, gas giant planets form along the same Birkeland current filaments as do stars. As the mass of the bodies along a filament increases, the snaking motion of the filament leaves them behind. It is then that electrogravitic capture takes place, which plays a role in forming the astonishingly varied exoplanetary systems that continue to puzzle astronomers. However, some of the newborn planetary bodies are not captured, resulting in the so-called rogue planets that sometimes baffle astrophysicists. In standard astronomy, brown dwarfs are considered too massive to be planets, yet not massive enough to sustain nuclear fusion of hydrogen in their cores, which astronomers believe is what powers stars, such as our Sun. However, again, in the electric universe, the power source is not any internal action, but the external Birkeland current. Science discovery has also proven over years that the Birkeland current is the organizing force at the heart of star formation. Just a few months ago, we reported on scientists' observation of so-called streamers of gas shown to be feeding the formation of high-mass stars. The physics of gravitational collapse simply does not explain what is actually being seen. And yet the well-established principles of plasma physics are nowhere to be found in science reports on the discovery. As described in a report published by Kyoto University, images taken by the ALMA telescope, quote, revealed a young star feeding from potentially two streamers. One such streamer was connected to the central region of the star, with a velocity gradient indicative of rotation and possibly infall. This suggests that the streamer carries enough matter at a high rate to quench feedback effects from the young star, eventually contributing to the overly dense region observed around the central massive star. The research team expected to see a dust disk, or a torus, of several hundred astronomical units in size, but they did not expect the spiral arms to reach far closer to the central source. Investigator Fernando Olguin stated, "We found streamers feeding what at the time was thought to be a disk, but to our surprise, there is either no disk or it is extremely small." The lead author of the paper summarized, "Our work seems to show that these structures are being fed by streamers, which are flows of gas that bring matter from scales larger than 1,000 astronomical units, essentially acting as massive gas highways." Again, it's essential that space scientists not consider any of these completely unexpected revelations in isolation. Taken as a whole, the treasure trove of increasingly sophisticated scientific data demand a fundamental rethinking of the core tenets of both planet and star formation theory. As I've said on other occasions, I think that the paralyzing dysfunction impeding scientific progress today is only a symptom of a much deeper and increasingly destructive dysfunction at the heart of our civilization. At this moment, the humane, ethical, and moral principles required to sustain any so-called advanced civilization are routinely being assaulted with ever greater and more brazen violence. Admittedly, in this increasingly disturbing epoch, the space sciences are not my foremost concern. Yet I do wonder daily if I will live to see any meaningful shift toward greater sanity in cosmology, the so-called queen of the sciences. In my moments of deepest pessimism, I sometimes take solace from a comment attributed to the Buddha, which is both exquisitely simple and cosmological in nature. 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth.